Hello, hello. Sorry, I'm just getting everything set up still. Hello from the Netherlands. That's a long ways away from where I'm at. Hello, you guys. We're just getting started. So if you're logging in, if you're on TikTok, there's a poll that's going. So as soon as you log in, you can vote on what you want to talk about. And then if you're on Facebook or YouTube, I have it across the screen and you can just make a comment in there on what you would like to talk about. We're just going to do a vote. I always find this is the easiest way to do it. By the way, my cat's like literally right behind my computer. So if I randomly fall or something, it's because he decided to make a scene and knock everything over. Yes, a big ocean away. One time I was doing a one-on-one call. I swear, my animals are always pretty chill and pretty quiet during the day until I sit down to do something, like either do a call or go live or record something, whatever. I was doing a one-on-one call the other day. Not kidding. The cat was over here and he jumped this way and like knocked my computer over and like all this stuff in the middle of the one-on-one. It was quite the scene. I just, what you do? Just like, sorry. This is what it is. And also, I wanted to let everybody know I just launched a brand new course. It's called Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. It's a 7-week course. It's the 7 steps to reclaiming your inner peace and mental clarity. I'm doing an exclusive offer on just this live. If you're interested in knowing more about it, it talks about rumination and managing your triggers and emotional roller coasters and emotional management strategies. If you're interested in or anything and have any questions, feel free to DM me. But if you're also interested, send me a DM because I'm doing an exclusive discount offer from this live. So whether you're watching it live or you're watching the replay, I'm doing a discount offer on my course and my coaching calls. So just send me a DM if you're interested or if you have questions on the course. It's a combination of everything that I dealt with, plus everything I've learned in grad school and about how to overcome side effects of trauma. So it's a very thorough research course from lived experience and clinical training. It's definitely the resource I wish I had back in the day. So if you're interested or have questions, like I said, just send me a DM because I am doing a discount offered from this live, whether you're watching it live or the replay. Okay, let's see how the poll is going. I don't think I'm a narcissist, but I'm always trying to find ways to make myself better. I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think we all should be doing that because we all have, here's the reality of the situation. We all have toxic traits. Like that's just part of being a human. And we all I would even say we all have different narcissistic traits because there is an element of survival and looking out for your best interests and all of that. So I absolutely don't think there's anything wrong with that. My mom and my dad are narcissists. I'm so sorry. Like, seriously, that is such a tough situation to heal from. No contact. Okay, so I have a vote over on Facebook for maintaining no contact. That can be really tough. It took me a long time to actually go no contact. A long time. Like, somewhere between 4 and 5 months. Thank you for the roses. Sorry, I'm like bouncing between 2 different screens, so sometimes I miss some of that, but thank you for that. I look sunburnt. Well, I did just work out like an hour ago. So I get really red when I work out, like very red faced. So it just is what it is. Thanks for the concern, though. forgot I need to swipe this over. I feel like I'm struggling with moving on. Hold on. I'm just so angry all the time. So anger is 100% expected, and anger is 100% justified. Like, why would you not be angry after all of this? I think sometimes we get frustrated that we get angry because they are kind of just like a crapshoot of a human being. We'll just say that. Because it's like, well, why should I be angry about this? Like, okay, I will say to you, like, and I love my mom, don't get me wrong, love my mom, but my mom never liked my narcissistic ex. She kind of saw through him from day one. So that was one of the things that she said to me was like, why are you struggling with this? Like, why are you angry about this? Like, he was was POS. Like, he's just an asshole. Like, so, but we can say that to ourselves too. And so we kind of discredit how we feel sometimes. And my biggest piece of advice is don't do that. Like, don't discredit how you feel. It's actually like in the course that I just wrote and just launched, it has a whole entire week about emotional management strategies, because it's not that we need to ignore the emotions, but we need to learn how to manage them. Because if we aren't managing and processing them, then they can end up coming back more intensely or turn into bitterness or whatever it might be. So anger is 100% normal and justifiable. Okay, so I actually just have a question here on Facebook too, on what I was just talking about. So how do I get my emotions to essentially stop going from like super high and then way down low, because I feel angry and then I want to cry like a river? This is normal. Like, this is very, very normal. So emotional dysregulation is like one of the number one side effects of trauma and just post-traumatic stress, not necessarily PTSD, you know it is, but just post-traumatic stress, because we're all going to be dealing with some side effects or some ways of post-traumatic stress because we went through trauma. And this is, again, why we just have to learn how to regulate it, is because we don't want to ignore the emotions that we're feeling. It's kind of like whenever you're dealing, it's kind of like whenever you're dealing with a child, and 9 times out of 10, when you ask them like not to do something, they do it. It's because it's like when people say like, don't think about a purple elephant, like you're going to think about it. So when we actually just embrace the emotion that we're feeling and we just accept that it's there, we can actually process it faster. So just my biggest piece of advice is, again, don't just shove them off. Like, if you are going to have these times where it just goes up and down, and you just kind of have to embrace where you're at in the moment. And the more that you do that, the more, and finding the strategies that works for you and all that, the better it will get. But again, like I said, I have a whole week of that in my course, because it's such a big part of what we go through is the emotional roller coaster. So again, guys, I did just launch that. It's the Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. It's aimed to walk you through 7 steps to reclaiming your inner peace and mental clarity after narcissism and narcissistic abuse. So it's an online course that's self-paced. And if you're interested, or if you have any questions, send me a direct message on whatever platform you're on, because I'm doing a discount offer from this live. So whether you're watching it live or you're watching the replay, I'm doing a discount offer for that, and also for my one-on-one coaching. So either way, whether you want to work one-on-one or if you just want to work through the course on your own time, send me a direct message and I'll get you the discounted information for it. Sorry, I have like several comments coming in at like one time. Yeah, it's interesting because like I remember being very up and down, like emotionally during this whole healing phase. I remember that vividly, but I recently, and I say recently, it was like a month or 2 ago, I found my journal that I was keeping during that whole process. And not only was I up and down day to day, like I was up and down hour by hour some days. So even though I was consistently working on it, I was still really struggling, because you're dealing with some bad habits that we're just trying to correct, and it does take time. You just have to, and I know this sounds really lame, but you do just have to trust the process and just be patient with the process. Journaling was a huge one for me when it came to emotional management. Yeah, if you would like more info, just send me a direct message. And because if you go to the link in my bio, the offer, you can only get the discounted offer if I send it to you. So just send me a direct message saying you'd like more info or you're interested, and I'll make sure to get that to you when the live is over. So just give me a few minutes after I end this and I'll catch up on all the DMs. But the nice thing about it is that it's self-paced, so there's no expiration date. Like once you purchase it, like you have it. There's no time frame. Sorry, I'm reading y'all. This is good to talk about. Okay, so I appreciate you saying this over here on YouTube. So hold on. I want to try to summarize this. So I can stay in contact, but about 3 days in, even though they treated me bad, my brain switches and goes to the few times that we had that were good. So I want you guys to comment on here, whatever platform you're on, whether you just say me or give me a thumbs up, whatever it might be. I want you to comment, and if you've ever struggled with, or you are currently struggling with, this like dichotomy about like, I know that they're a bad person, but I still, whether it's I miss them or I remember the good times, and you like have this like mental battle that you have between the horribleness and the good memories. So if you've ever struggled with that or you are struggling with that, just say like me or give me a thumbs up, something like that. So quite a bit of us. I do that for one reason, well, two reasons. One reason is so that you guys can see you're not alone in that struggle. It's a very, very common struggle, and it's a very frustrating struggle. Oh, sorry. My allergies have been horrible for the past like week. I'm so dramatic. But it is a very difficult struggle, and this is kind of part of what this cognitive dissonance is because we have this like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde version of them in our brain that live simultaneously rent-free in our head. And it can be really frustrating because it's like there's all these really terrible actions that were done to us, but because of the love bombing phase or re-love bombing and the cycle of the abuse, there's also these good memories that are there too. So I want to explain to you guys actually one of my worst triggers that I ever had. So to kind of make a long story short, my ex lived 3 hours away from where I lived when we first met. And he lived in an area where like my family has like land and stuff. So we go out there quite frequently. And that's kind of the area that he lived. Well, the best times in our relationship was at the beginning when he lived out there. And then we went back out there and visited very frequently. And that was always like the best times in our relationship, is when we went out to like the country and all of that and just kind of got away. Like we rarely ever fought when we were out there unless we were at the bar. Guaranteed anytime we went to a bar, we fought. But I remember the first time that I went back out there after we broke up, and I drove past the exit that I used to take to get to his place when we first met. And it didn't trigger sadness. It triggered all of that, like the whole, like the good memories that I had of the relationship. And it was the first time that I was triggered, but not in a sense where I felt the betrayal. It was triggered in the sense of like, but there were some really good times there. So was it really all that bad? Like it was a different type of trigger. And this is how I had to deal with it. What I just started to tell myself was, I'm grateful that I can at least walk away from the relationship with some good memories. However, all the good memories combined don't outweigh the fact that he made me feel physically unsafe in my own home. Period. End of story. Because nobody should ever violate you in that way in a relationship. You should never fear who you're sharing your life with. And all the good memories combined couldn't and I was mainly talking about that one moment where I did kick him out. Like, and I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. Like he had me backed into him. I never really got hit, but he had me backed into a corner. He was like spitting on me. He did have his fist balled up, and it was like this fight or flight moment where it's like, if I don't do something right now, I'm going to get, I'm going to get hit. And that's the night that I kicked him out. And all of the good memories combined could not outweigh that moment for me. So I just had to choose gratitude that they were there, because there were elements of that. It's like, okay, well, I wouldn't mind that part in a relationship again. But when this side's over here where I feel physically unsafe for my safety and my home, none of this matters at all. So um, that really, really helped me. Is I acknowledged the fact that that was there, and I had not. It wasn't even necessarily that I missed him. I guess it was just more of a questioning, like, was it really all that bad? And it's like, well, yeah, it was. Um, so I just chose to accept that those good memories were there instead of like try to forget them. It's like, well, they're there. They're part of my story, but it's also not the main part of my story. It's just part of it. Um, so hopefully that kind of helps with that. It's okay to be grateful for the good memories. I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just not letting the good memories create disclarity in your mind about your own experience. Um, and that's what we have to be. Someone commented, protect your hearts. Like that's what you're doing. You're also protecting your heart from getting back into this, because I can promise you, you ever go back, it might be better for maybe a month or two, but it will always get worse. Always, whenever you go back. And if you think about it, it's because it's like, okay, they were able to push you to this point and then you took them back. So it's like, well, I know I can get here. So how much further can I go? So it always gets worse. Like always. But that, I appreciate you sharing that. Sorry, I'm reading. This can get a little, it can get a little cray because it'll like, no comments will show up, and then it just like poof, like 20 of them will come in at one time. Just making sure I didn't miss any questions. I love what you guys are saying on here though. Oh, wait. How does one end the cycle? I keep finding the narcissistic people, and it's so hard when you first meet. Okay, so this is actually a really good question. So this is something I'm going to actually do a video on at some point in time. It'll probably be a YouTube video, so I can go into more detail about it. But I want us to be really careful with the language that we use. As far as I work with a lot of clients where they just say, I just keep attracting toxic people. And here's the thing. Number one, when we keep saying that, we kind of keep inviting that into our life. It's almost kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like if we continue to tell ourselves, like, I just always invite toxic people into our life, then we just almost kind of, it's almost like we're calling them. um, and it's, for me, it's actually not necessarily that we attract toxic people. Think about it this way. Toxic and narcissistic people usually have certain personality traits that they are attracted to. Not just attracted to, they're borderline predatory towards, where they seek out certain types of people. And it's usually people pleasers. It's usually people that are highly empathetic. It's people that, can show love and tenderness and sympathy towards other people, because that's what they feed off of. So they are, in a way, predatory, and they seek out these kinds of people. So it's not that you're attracting them, it's that unfortunately you have a certain type of person that is seeking you out. So what's important is to be able to recognize the signs of it, and not just recognize the signs, but actually trust your gut on it. Because I want y'all to be like really honest with yourself, and this is not a judgment thing at all. I have a purpose for doing this. I want you guys to comment on here. And again, me, thumbs up, whatever it might be. When you look back on the relationship, if you're honest with yourself, that there were red flags that you saw, but for whatever reason, you chose to ignore them. I want you to just comment like me, give me a thumbs up, like something like that. If you remember, I saw a red flag, and I'm one of them. Like, oh Lord, I had a whole list. So, and I just want to, I'm gonna do something with this. And again, this is not judgment. There's a reason I'm doing this. Okay, so like everyone, right? So, and here's the thing, it's not that you can't see the red flags. It's not that you can't trust yourself and you can't trust your judgment. It's that for whatever reason, there was a story that you were telling yourself in your head, a narrative, or we let them convince us, whatever it may be. There was something that we put more weight into than we did the actual red flags. So it's not that we don't have good intuition. It's not that we can't trust ourselves. And it's not that we can't recognize this behavior. We can. We just have to listen to it. And we have to trust that more than whatever other story that's being told over here. Because that's exactly what I did. And honestly, the story that I was even telling myself really wasn't even one that he was telling me. It was a story that I was telling myself. And my story was I was putting more weight into the fear of being alone because of where I was at in my life. He found me at a very vulnerable place, and all the love bombing was very intoxicating. And I created this kind of fantasy in my head, and I put more weight in the fantasy and the fear of being alone than I did with all these red flags that I was seeing right up here. And that fear of being alone is also what kept me in the relationship. And I kept putting more fear or more weight in the fear than of the behaviors that I was seeing right in front of me. So that was a story that I was putting more weight into than what I was actually seeing. And I can say that without judging myself. I can say that without being angry with myself, because why I needed to look at that was I needed to understand why I accepted this kind of behavior and why I, in a way, allowed him to continue to be in my life, because I did, in a sense. Like I did, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not saying that that's such a, never mind. I don't want to accidentally get myself to a rabbit hole there. But in a way, I allowed him to continue to be a part of my life. And I needed to find out why. Like, what was I putting more weight into? What was more important to me than everything that I saw right up front? Um, and and that was what it was for me. I was so afraid of being alone that I essentially was like, well, I know this isn't the best. I know there's lots of red flags here, but at least I'm not alone. And that's like the definition of codependency as well. So I had to work on that a lot. um, so you do have the right intuition. You are able to see the signs. You just have to trust your gut and trust your intuition. And well, not even necessarily trust it. You have to listen to it and act on it. So that was my big why. And that question, that's the hard one. That's because that's the inner reflection work. That's the tough part. So, and part of this, like, and again, I'm going back to the course too, because this relates to it. There's a whole week in there about correcting the narrative. Like I think that's actually the title of one of the weeks it's I really think that's what I called it, correcting the narrative, which is where we start telling ourselves the truth story and we start to do that reflection work. And there's questions to kind of like guide you through this process and whatnot. About like, okay, this is the story that they told me, but here's really what happened. Or, these are the red flags that I saw. This is what actually happened to me. Like it kind of walks you through these things. So again, the course that I just launched, it's called Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. It's a 7-week online course. It's all self-paced, and it gives you emotional management strategies, like how to reduce the intensity of your triggers. It goes really heavy into like rumination and the obsessive thinking cycle and how to break out of that, because, oh my Lord, was that a struggle for me. And then it also talks about this narrative and finding closure. So every week has a different topic. I'm doing a thing today where anybody that DMs me from this live, whether you're watching it live or the replay, I'm doing an exclusive discount that you can't find it anywhere else unless I directly send it to you. So if you're interested or even have questions about it, send me a direct message, whatever platform you're on, and I'll get you the discount code or answer your questions that you might have. Because all of this stuff really just kind of works together. Like the obsessive thinking and the overthinking cycle can sometimes trigger, well, not sometimes, it oftentimes triggers these like big emotional responses because there's so many unanswered questions that you have in your brain. Or maybe you figure out the answer to one question, but that answer leads you to like six different other questions. And then you just get like stuck in this, like, because you're never going to understand all of this. And we get to this point where we get stuck trying to understand that we can't reach acceptance because we're too busy trying to understand. And the reality is, acceptance and understanding are two very different things. We're never going to understand everything, but that doesn't mean we can't accept it. And unfortunately, part of this is I can't, yeah, if you can't DM me on TikTok or even YouTube, you can direct message me on Instagram too. That's fine. Sorry if I keep hacking. It's so attractive and so lovely to listen to. But anyways, we can reach acceptance, and part of the reaching acceptance is accepting without understanding. And that part's really hard because I'm a why guy. Like, I like to know the why behind things. Like, I'm in grad school. I love studying the brain and the anatomy of the brain and how trauma affects it, and because it helps things make sense. And it's so frustrating for me when I just can't understand why, or I don't know why, or I can't get the answer. So that was, Lord, that was hard for me because we just can't do it. Like, we can't understand everything. To answer the question about the course, it is applied for all forms of relationships. It's not just romantic. So because here's the thing, narcissistic relationships, the aftermath of them, regardless of the type of relationship, the work is pretty much the same. Like, one of the probably the worst forms of narcissism that I dealt with was actually in a work environment, and I dealt with all the same stuff when I left that job. I just didn't know what it was back then because it was my romantic relationship that made me start to figure out what was going on. But once I realized what it was, I was able to kind of think back and just, there's a fly in my house. I was able to think back and be like, oh, wow, that's why this situation was so difficult. And that's why this situation was so hard. And this is because it's like, I've dealt with this a lot. Okay, well, what's happened to me that allows me to keep accepting this behavior? So yeah, absolutely. That was a really long answer too. Yes, it applies to all forms. Sorry, if y'all have never been on a live with me before, I'm like this sometimes. I go on all these little rabbit hole tangents, and you just got to go with the flow, sister friend. It just is what it is. So I kind of ended up talking about it organically anyways, but the one that there was kind of a tie on the poll about obsessive thinking and also maintaining no contact. I love your outbursts. Yeah, if you've been on my lives before, that it's just part of it. My brain is a really, really fun place to be. We'll just leave it at that. It's entertaining. Yeah, and here's the thing, like, oh my gosh, this fly is going to just drive me nuts. Does anybody else just, like, if there's a fly in their house, does it just make you feel dirty? It's like, why are you attracted to my house? Like, that makes me feel, I don't know why. It just makes me feel dirty when there's a fly or flies in the house. It just really genuinely makes me feel gross. Like, eh. It's not that I'm grossed out by the fly. Like, I'm not afraid of them, but it's like y'all eat poop. Why are you in my house? Like, that's just gross. Yes, I'm like a clean freak. So when there's flies, I take personal offense that you're in my house. Why are you attracted to my home? Okay. Let me see if I missed any questions while I was on my fly rant. Told y'all, my brain is a fun place to hang out in. Oh, someone else was an OT on here. So I'm almost done. I finish in May of next year. So I'm in all my my fieldwork rotations right now. So I'm still just a student, but at least I'm a student practitioner now, and I'm not having to go to class all the time. Because let me tell you what, going back to like full-time school in your 30s on campus, You feel like you're 21 again, but in all the wrong ways. Like it was tough. Um, at least now I feel a little bit more like an adult. Now that I'm in clinical rotations. How long after the relationship did you get the safe feeling back? And will I ever? So, yes, you will. Here's the thing, I'm going to be very frank. I really truly believe that when you deal with this kind of trauma, that time does not heal all wounds. It's a combination of time and work. You have to have strategies. You have to be able to correct the mental processes that happen because there are just natural bad mental habits that form after you deal with traumatic relationships and even experiences. But when you're under this constant threat, because that's really what it is, your brain is processing that you're under constant threat during this relationship for however long you were in there. That doesn't just correct itself by itself. Like you can, I guess, get to a way where it's kind of okay. I'm going to compare it to like when you lose a loved one. Like, my dad's talked about how my grandmother passed away when I was 7. And my dad's just kind of talked about how the pain of losing his mom has never really gone away. He's just learned to live with it. And I feel like that if you don't have the strategies to really correct this and learn to manage it in a way, that's kind of what happens is that you just kind of learn to live with these side effects that have happened to you. Which is why I think this topic of discussion really is so important, because for a long time, this has not really been acknowledged. Like this type of abuse, like it's new, it's trending, it's whatever, it's a buzzword at this point. But I've been doing this for 2 years now, and why I do it is because it's only just now being talked about really over the last couple of years. People are now starting to realize what they've actually been through. So there's people that really have struggled with this healing process for years and years because we're not talking about it specifically. Like even with me, when I was in therapy every single week, like every week. Like the day I kicked my ex out, because that experience was so traumatic, I called my therapist the next day. I said, I feel fine right now, but I know at some point I'm not going to be. So I just want to go ahead and get started back up. So even though I was working with her on a day-to-day basis, it was more about what's happened to me in my life that allowed me to accept this kind of behavior from not just him, but all these other people that I had realized too. But I wasn't really getting the like day-to-day strategies and how to move forward and how to get from like barely functioning to surviving to actually like thriving again. I had to figure a lot of this out on my own. And unfortunately, I learned even more of it way later. Well, way later, I mean like over a year later, when I started my grad program and got into the mental health semester and really started learning more things. I was like, oh wow, this would have been really helpful back then. And that's why like I do the coaching. That's why I have the course. Like that's why I do these things, because I am a firm believer that when you have specific strategies and you have a plan and you're consistently working that plan, this doesn't take forever to find peace again. You just have to have a plan, and you just have to have something that you're working and having goals and, having specific techniques that you can use for getting yourself, I call it a rumination roundabout. Like when you're obsessively thinking, it's like you're on this, if you have roundabouts where you live, if you get stuck on the inside lane and you can't get to your exit, you're just stuck going in a circle, and it's the same circle until you can finally get off. Like we need some things that can get us off or just prevent us from getting on in the first place. But nobody really talks about that. Like, and some therapists do, like some do, but overall it's really hard to find that. And that's why I love like the occupational therapy side of mental health, because that's what OTs more focus on, because OTs don't really do the talk therapy and mental health. They do more of the strategies and the coping side of things. So that it's so cool how this is all just blended together for me. But anyways, told y'all the rabbit holes. To answer the initial question of how long does it take, I think, or how long did I start to feel safe? I really didn't start to feel safe, like actually safe, from him specifically. Uh, well, here's what happened. He ended up moving out of state, and when that happened, a lot of my borderline paranoia went away. Um, and that happened about 5 months after the breakup. That was a huge relief for me, because there wasn't that fear of running into him again. So that alone, that happening, did help me feel more safe. Um, but when I really started to feel like no matter what he tried to do, like if he tried to, you know, do a public smear campaign or like whatever, I would probably say it was around that same time frame. It was probably about 6 months later. But the difference was is that around the third or fourth month is when I really started to just try things to stop the obsessive thinking cycle, deal with my triggers, manage my emotions. Like I was kind of doing trial and error. Like I was literally Googling stuff, like trying to I just needed something. And I finally found some things that worked for me. And I did them consistently every single day for 6 weeks. And it was kind of like I woke up one day and and I know this sounds weird and a little unbelievable, but it's true. I just woke up one day and it was just like, I don't hate him. I don't love him. I don't wish him harm. I don't wish him well. I just don't care. Like I just truly just reached this place of indifference. And it really did just kind of happen that way. But I was working a plan. Again, really long-winded answer. So sorry. Trey's coaching is amazing. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. Sorry, I'm just catching up on comments because I talked for too long, and now there's lots. So I just want to make sure I didn't miss any question. Oh, I've gotten this question before. Do you believe once a cheater, always a cheater, or do you believe anyone can change? Okay, I know you don't mean it this way, but I always feel like this question's like a setup question. um, okay, so do I believe in once a cheater, always a cheater? I'm going to go ahead and say this up front. I do believe that no matter what people struggle with, I truly do believe that anybody has the capacity to change. I really believe that. However, I do believe that change does not happen overnight. And I do believe that change takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes time. And if you think about it, healing from this takes time, and it takes work, and it takes effort. So if someone's going to change like this core part of who they are, you cannot convince me that that happens in 4 months. Like you just can't. You can't even convince me that that happens in 6 months, really, because of how much work that that really does take. So is it this universal rule for me that once a cheater, always a cheater? No, I really don't think that. Do I think that it's hard for people to like break this habit of chronic cheating? Yes, because again, people that are chronic cheaters, it's actually a form of addiction, not even necessarily the I have to use my intimacy part. I have to use my word carefully. Not even necessarily that part, just the thrill of the chase. That in itself is its own addiction. So I have to be a little bit careful about that. Ugh, hold on. How does this even happen? Okay. Okay, if you're ever on Facebook, I'm taking care of this. Sorry. That's obnoxious. Can you can you do more yellow coffee moments? I do them so they don't get transferred over to my Facebook quite as regularly, but I do them about 2 to 3 times a week on my TikTok. But yes, they're still there, they're still coming. The yellow mud talks are like probably my favorite thing I do. Although the skits are fun too. Just wanted to say you're amazing and your videos have been helping me. So thank you. That's really sweet. Oh yeah, I know it wasn't a setup. I just know some people have asked that. Like it just, I don't know. It feels like one of those questions where there's not really a good answer to it, but that really is my opinion. Is that, do I think it's a universal law, once a cheater, always a cheater? No, I don't. But I do know that it takes a lot of work to correct that lifestyle. Is that the right word? I don't know if that's the right word or not. Make sure I didn't miss any other questions. I got spammed over here on Facebook. I'll tell y'all what though, the little spam bots on Facebook have gotten horrible. It's so bad. Oh, okay. So I have a question over here on Facebook, so I'll repeat it for y'all in the other platforms. So, do you have any tips for when you have children with this person and they have to be in your life in some capacity? Ugh. First of all, I'm sorry that you're going through that, like because that is a never-ending battle. Um, like I have a great co-parenting relationship with my kid's mom, and I know how hard that is on me emotionally. Like it's never not easy when I drop my kids back off at their mom's house, and that's actually a safe environment for them. So to add all of this on top of it, like I don't know how y'all do it. Like I genuinely, like, y'all are some of the strongest people on the planet dealing with this. um so since I don't have like the lived experience on this, I can give you some generic things, because I'll be honest, like if there's ever a topic kind of like this one where I don't have the lived experience in, I will give like the generic knowledge that I know, but I always also refer to people that do talk about it that may have the lived experience. So I'll get to that in a second. One of the things that's like really important for that is, especially when you know that you're going to see this person, unfortunately you're always being subjected to some sort of drama. We'll just keep it at that. So, what I have recommended some of my clients to do is kind of have this like strategy that you have, that you do something to prepare yourself mentally before you see them. And then you have a routine that you do after you see them to just kind of decompress and process, especially if, like, really, I think it's good to do that whether drama happens or not. Because anytime that you are just being exposed to a person that caused you trauma, you're going to have some sort of emotional response to it. But I think that that's normal. It's kind of like me right now. Do I think I would have a full blown panic attack if I ever somehow ran into my ex again? No. Am I gonna like it? No, because he caused me trauma. Do I think I'm gonna hide in a corner and have a panic and blood pressure go up and all of that? No. At the beginning, yes, but not that extreme anymore. But I'm never gonna like the prospect of that, because again, he caused me trauma. So I would just have like a routine that you have for you, because the thing is you have to take care of you. Now when it comes to like the kids, one thing that you'll hear everybody say that co-parents is never talk bad about the other parent in front of the kids, because that will 100% be used against you by the narcissistic person. The big focus on that actually is building the armor for your own children as well. So when you're taking care of yourself and you're learning how to process and manage this and deal with the emotions and deal with the triggers, you're learning a skill set. All this stuff is skill set, by the way. Like these are things that we learn, which is why it's so hard at the beginning when you're implementing this stuff, because you're teaching yourself a new skill. And just like any new skill, you're not an expert with it right off the bat. But when you're teaching yourself this new skill set, you now are equipped to teach your children the same skill set, because unfortunately at some point in time it is very likely that the children will be used as pawns, or they will deal with the same kind of abuse that you dealt with. So armoring your children so that way they have the same strategies that you do is extremely important. I do know, I need to put this on my link, I forgot about this. There is actually a webinar that's coming up, I think in June. I'm going to look this up whenever it's done, whenever I'm off of here. There's a webinar in June that's being put on by Lisa Sunny. Her Stronger Than Before is her handle, and it's about co-parenting and armoring your kids and all of that. I just don't remember the date off the top of my head, but I will get a link for that put on the link in my bio, like on my site that I've got. I'll get the information put on there by the end of today. So I completely forgot to add that. So sorry. So attractive. But that made my eyes water. But she's a good one to follow. Ladisco Mama is a good one to follow. And then Roller Coaster of Love. She's a good one to follow too, because all three of them talk about it because they actively have lived experience in that. So just go and like binge watch their videos and you'll find some. I promise. Oh, look at you, you know. So the webinar is June 22nd. It's about a month away. And I don't remember everyone she has on the panel, but I know she has like a child psychologist on the panel. I think she even has a pediatrician that's on the panel. She has a licensed psychologist on the panel. She has Ladisco Mama on the panel because she is she lives this as well, and she's a survivor coach as well. So the panel's really, really solid. I just don't remember everybody's name, but I was looking at it, I was like, dang, that's a good list of people. But yeah, I will get that information put on my website by the end of today. So thank you for asking that, because that reminded me I never did that. So I always like to give out other resources and stuff that are going on in the community. Oh, by the way, if y'all aren't, I do a free newsletter every month, and it has like a quote of the month. It has like a self-care tip. I usually feature another creator that I trust and that puts out great content. And then I also like let you guys know about other events or resources and stuff that are going on in the community. If you go to the link in my bio and you scroll about halfway down, there's a place where you can subscribe to that. It's free. I'm never going to charge for it. It only goes out once a month, so you're not going to be spammed by me or anything like that. But if you want to be put on that list, just go to the link in my bio. Like I said, scroll about halfway down, and there'll be a spot that says like sign up for my free newsletter here. Let me see. Oh, I saw that someone just said I'm struggling finding the strength to get out. I also, in the link in my bio too, if you need this, just because it's on topic with what you're saying, if you need this, scroll again. It's kind of towards the bottom. There's actually an article that I have posted about creating an exit strategy. That's really, really good and really solid. It's free. I just have it up there. And understand, it is very common for us to feel like we're not strong enough to leave, or there's so much fear attached to leaving. And I mean, I dealt with it too. I tried, the first time I tried to leave was only about 3 months in. Like, I actually told him not to come back. It was the first like really, really bad rage episode that I witnessed. There was I called them the warm-up rage episodes that happened before that, but this was the first really bad one. And I didn't kick him out that day, but he left. It was like 2:00 in the morning. He was drunk. He got in the car and drove to wherever. Well, he ended up driving to a friend's house that lived 3 hours away. And I told him not to come back. And I let him convince me to let him come back. And honestly, I just wasn't strong enough to say no twice. I barely had the strength to say no the first time. But then when he just kind of was persistent about it, I I don't know how to explain it other than I gave in. So I've been there, and I had to deal with a lot of guilt with that because if I had not taken him back, I would have avoided a lot of the stuff that I ended up dealing with. Because again, that was pretty early on. Like that was only the first 3 months. And allowing him to come back, like, had such negative effects on the dynamic of my family. It had negative effects on me as a parent. I exposed this monster to my kids for much, much longer. I dealt with a lot of guilt, like inward guilt about that. So I get it. The thing that I would say to you, though, is the journey is going to be hard no matter what you do. Whether you stay in this relationship or whether you leave this relationship, the journey is hard. There's a key difference between both journeys, though. When you stay, you're voluntarily giving up your power to this person. And that is always going to be a hard journey that does not have an expiration date. When you leave, you are choosing to take your power back, and the hard doesn't last nearly as long. And your worst day without them is always better than your best day with them every time. And I know it's hard to see that right now because you're currently in it, but just trust me. The worst day without them is better than the best day with them. How did you stop blaming yourself for staying so long? Woo! That's a toughie. Well, not toughie, but I had to. Okay, here's what happens. Get ready for another rant. So, when we get out of this relationship, we start to learn about this, right? We start to learn about narcissistic traits, how the abuse cycle works, what love bombing is, and all this stuff. And we have all this new wealth of knowledge, right? Hopefully, most of it's accurate because there's a lot of it's a buzzword now. So sometimes not all the information out there is correct. But we have and we start to work on ourselves and we start to have different values and we start to have boundaries. And even if we are struggling with it a little bit, like the fact is we have boundaries and we're actively working on this, right? And here's where we can get stuck in the frustration with ourselves or feeling guilty with ourselves is what we're doing it sometimes, not all the time, but most of the time, what we're doing is we're looking back on our past self and trying to hold our past self to the knowledge and the standards that our present self has. And when we continue to do that, we're always going to be mad at ourselves. But we have to remember what the mindset that we were in back then. And this is what helped me the most is I had to ask myself, okay, when this happened, what was going through my mind in that moment? Not right now, not what I know now, but in that moment, what was going through my mind? In that moment, maybe it was fear. Maybe I was just trying to keep my family together. Maybe I genuinely was just afraid of being alone. Maybe I really did think I was the problem. I had to remind myself of what was going on in my mind. And again, what was my narrative in that moment? And when you can remind yourself, this is my truth of that moment, then you can start to release some of this guilt and anger towards yourself. Because, and I actually talk about this in my course too, there's a whole section on it about self-deprecating talk, because we end up being really good at beating ourselves up emotionally. Because we say things like, I was such an idiot for staying so long. Like, how could I have done this? Like, I was so stupid and this and that. And we talk really horribly to ourselves. And we have to stop doing that, because when we do that, we're actually keeping ourselves in the cycle of emotional abuse. Just the difference is we've become our own abuser. So what I had to do was, and again, in the course, I actually walk you through how to create this, but I wrote down, here's the self-deprecating thought that I tend to struggle with, which is like, I was such an idiot for staying. And here is the truth, which is, I was just trying to keep my family together. So that way, when I have that thought of, I was such an idiot, I go, nope, stop. We're not doing that today. I wasn't an idiot. I was just trying to keep my family together. Or nope, stop. I wasn't stupid. I was masterfully manipulated. And you can start telling yourself the truth and start seeing yourself with more grace than you do with judgment. And again, there's a whole section in my course about how to break this down because we have to stop being so deprecating to ourselves. So, again, just in case there's some new people on here, I just launched a new course. It's called Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit, and it's 7 steps to reclaiming your inner peace and mental clarity. It goes into that, what I was just talking about, managing your triggers, having emotional management strategies. It goes very heavily into rumination. It even talks about how the brain affects trauma. So it's 7 weeks. It's jam-packed of information, but it's self-paced. So you take as long as you need to. There's no expiration date on it. I'm doing a special for this live and this where if you DM me, just DM me if you're interested or if you have questions, because I'm offering a discount for the course and for one-on-one coaching if you happen to be interested in that too from this live, whether you're watching it live or you're watching the replay. So just send me a DM if you're interested, because you can't get this discount code unless I actually send it to you. So if you're interested or have questions, just let me know. And I'll answer any questions that you might have. But I do have a whole section in my course about that because it's definitely something that for as long as I've been doing this and coaching people one-on-one, it's very rare. Like I can probably count on one hand how many people I coach that don't really struggle with this self-deprecating thought. Most people do. Okay, I'm going to address this because, well, hold on. Oh, okay. This is a good question. So how do you deal with, I have 2 questions I'm going to answer, but how do you deal, oh, crack. Hang on, sorry. Oh no. Sorry, I had someone calling me. So I lost connection on TikTok there for a second. Okay, but the question is, how do you deal with being terrified getting into a new relationship with someone else in the future? Well, first of all, I think that if you are still feeling terrified about getting into a new relationship, you may not be ready, and that's okay. I think you're always going to be a little bit nervous about it. I mean, why not? You're potentially getting vulnerable with somebody again. Like you're going to get nervous about that. But what I had to do was I had to not overgeneralize. And what I mean by that is it's very hard for us sometimes to not just assume that everybody is a narcissist or everybody's toxic after we deal with this because we're so afraid of dealing with it again that we kind of convince ourselves that we are. So really, for me, it was less about trusting other people and it was more about trusting myself and trusting myself enough that I had worked on myself enough that I knew what behaviors to look out for, that I remembered the consequences that happened from not paying attention to the red flags last time and to just not do that again. Hang on one second, guys. Give me like 1 minute. I'll be right back. I think my dog's getting into something she shouldn't. Pause. I'm not going off. Just hold on 1 second. Okay. That wasn't too bad. Yes, my dog always tries to get in the live. She's like super quiet until I'm doing something productive, and then she is a menace. She's actually been fairly quiet on this one. But yeah, for me, it was more about trusting myself than it was trusting other people. Because here's the thing, trusting other people is truly a choice. Like we choose to trust someone or not to trust them based on things that we see, characteristics that they have, whatever it may be. Like we choose to put our trust into somebody. It's ultimately a choice. So it's more about trusting yourself enough to make the right choice. Because one of the things that I had to tell myself with my now fiance, I really struggled. I don't think well, maybe I'd have to ask him. I feel like I hit it pretty well, but I'm sure I didn't. I struggled with the trust part. I if I'm honest with y'all, I not probably, I started dating too soon. I wasn't fortunately, I just found someone that was very patient and understanding because he had gone through something similar. But it probably would have been smarter for me to wait a little bit longer. It just kind of happened. Um, but I remember specifically there was this one day, it was about, I would probably say about 2 months into our relationship, maybe a little bit longer, where I just was like, you know what? I can't control what he does. I can't, I cannot control whether or not he decides to cheat. Because that was my biggest fear. I got cheated on by my ex for the last 5 months of our relationship, and it was so violating for me. It was so hard for me to get over that. Um, because here's the thing with my narcissistic ex, like we did all the things. Like we would text each other when we were leaving the house, like, hey, I'm running this errand. We would text each other where we got to work. We shared a location with each other, like all of this. Um, and he still was cheating. So it's like you can set up all the parameters in the world, but if someone wants to cheat, they're going to cheat and they're going to figure it out. So it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, we can with my fiance. It was like, I mean, yeah, we can share our location, but like, why? Like, it don't. If you want to do that to like make me feel comfortable, like that's what my ex did, and he still did it, or whatever it might be. Um, and I just what I was holding on to was I was holding on to a potential situation that could happen that I have absolutely no control over. And so I just made the choice one day. I'm just like, you know what, if he decides to wake up one day and not see the value that I bring to the relationship anymore, and he decides instead of just saying like, you know what, I'm not feeling this anymore, and he decides to go and cheat, then that's on him. And that's not on me. And if he ever decides to wake up one day and he doesn't see my worth and he doesn't see, and not that I'm like perfect, but I think I'm a pretty good catch. And if he decides to wake up one day and not see that, I can't control that. That's completely on him. What I can control is not internalizing that action if it ever does happen. Because if he does that, that again, it's on him for whatever reason, and it's not on me. I'm not a perfect person at all. Nobody is. But when people cheat, it rarely has anything to do with the other person. It has something to do with what's going on with them. So I just had that realization. And when I had that, it was like all of this anxiety just went away, where it's like, I can't control it. And if he ever does that, it's on him. It's not on me. So that helped me quite a bit. Oh, thank you for the heart. That was cute. You normalizing the partner caring about the other triggers kind of blew my mind. You know, I'm not gonna lie, it was hard for me to acknowledge that I was still dealing with these triggers to him when we started dating. But here's what I told him at the beginning, after like the first when I realized like, oh, okay, this might be turning into something, is I just told him, I know that I'm going to get triggered. I don't know what those are going to be, but I will communicate that to you when it happens. So I kind of told him up front because I wanted to see how he would react to that. And I was very fortunate that he never took the triggers personally, but I also told him up front, if I get triggered, it's probably rarely going to not have anything to do with you. It's going to have everything to do with what I went through. And I'm actively working on that because I was still in therapy and I was still, like I told you, it was probably too soon for me to start dating. But fortunately, he was very patient with that. And I think, again, he's gone through something similar. So because we've gone through similar situations, like he's even gotten triggered in our relationship too. So we both just have to have that commitment of like when it's an actual trigger and not like we have an issue with something that happened, we just can't take it personally because we know where it's coming from. However, our triggers are still our own responsibility. Like it's not his job to fix my triggers. Like I had to learn how to manage them, and I had to learn how to work on the belief system attached to my triggers. That's not his job. His job, the only job that he has in regards to my triggers, and I feel the same about me, is to create a space that's safe for me to work on them. And that's their job. It's not his job to fix them. Therapy did help me. Um, Therapy helped me more in the sense of answering the question of what has happened to me throughout my life that allowed me to accept these kind of behaviors from somebody. Did therapy necessarily help me with the day-to-day healing? Not really. I mean, and I love my therapist. I've been going there for years, but not really. I was very fortunate to have a therapist that acknowledged the fact that narcissistic abuse was a real thing, which that's kind of hard to find. She actually helped put the term and connect the dots with me. Um, but as far as the day to day, how to deal with it all, I really had to figure a lot of this out on my own. And that's why I have my course. That's why I do coaching. Like that's why I do what I do, because it was I'm trying to be the resource that I really needed at the time because I wasn't on TikTok or anything. So I was figuring this all out on my own. I saw a question. Oh, there was two questions I saw earlier. So do the flashbacks ever go away? Okay, so we have to remember that there are certain things that do happen after any relationship ends, whether it's good or bad. And memories are just memories, like they're just that. And so regardless of the dynamic of the relationship, like you will have memories of it. If you're talking about the actual like flashbacks, like the ones of like maybe like something traumatic, I guess, or something that you forgot about. Here's the reason why those even happen. These happen because when you are in this relationship, and to give you a little preview of what I talk about in the course. So I keep it very simple when I talk about the brain anatomy and what happens with trauma because it's very, very complex. So I try to just kind of do the basics with it. But there's two main areas in the brain that are affected when it comes to your trauma. One is called the limbic system, which is kind of an overall term. There's other parts in the brain within that system. And then there's something called your neocortex. Your limbic system is your emotional brain. And that's what actually starts the process. And again, I'm kind of keeping this very simple, but that's what starts the process of your fight or flight response. And your neocortex is your rest and digest. So when you're in these relationships, because you're under this constant threat and you're constantly being made to feel unsafe, even if it's just emotionally unsafe, what's happened is that your limbic system becomes your main operating system in your brain, which is what it was never intended to be that way. It was intended for your neocortex. Like evolutionarily, that's what's developed to be like your main baseline. But unfortunately, with chronic trauma, the limbic system becomes over responsive and hyperactive. So when you're in the relationship, you're being so run by your emotional brain because you're just trying to keep yourself safe that your thinking brain is kind of put on the back burner and you're not processing a lot of the things that are happening to you. So there's a lot of things that you've suppressed over time. There's a lot of things that you've probably forgotten over time. And when you get out of the relationship, your brain starts to feel safe again and it knows it's in a safer environment that the neocortex is now able to start coming into the forefront. And all of a sudden you start having flashbacks because these things that you've suppressed, because it's like, well, why I'm trying to survive. I don't have time to deal with the processing of this emotion or this memory. So, but once you become safe again, you start to have these flashbacks. And this is one of those things like you do have to just like accept it's part of the process and they do reduce over time. That's one of the few things that with time does get better as long as you have again like the strategies like how to deal with the emotions, how to process it, how to be okay with the fact that you're probably grieving. Like you need to learn how to manage the flashbacks, but as far as the frequency of the flashbacks, they do reduce over time. Just seeing if I missed any other questions. I'm in therapy, but honestly, what has been most helpful to me is watching videos, reading, joining groups specific to this topic. I would agree with that. Um, I think that therapy is extremely helpful and it serves its purpose in this. But I think I tell people this on all my one on one calls. My coaching is not to replace therapy. I think coaching and therapy work really well together because you do need to answer that question of, well, what's happened to me that's allowed me to accept this kind of behavior? But at the same time, like we need to get to the point where we're we're moving forward still on a day-to-day basis because the other danger to all this is sometimes we can get stuck in the education phase, like where we just keep almost like binge watching information and we can get stuck there. And at some point we do have to shift that focus of, okay, I know enough and I know what I need to know. Now I need to shift the same mental energy, mental focus into my healing and get really reclaim my life and start to do things that I enjoy again and all of that. So it's kind of taking that same mental energy but putting it back into yourself instead of the education phase. The education phase is very, very important, but unfortunately we can get stuck in there for too long. Sometimes, not all the time. Okay, y'all, so I probably have about like 10 more minutes. So does anybody have any other questions? So before I forget, I'll say it again really fast that I just launched the Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. It's a 7-week online course. It goes into a lot of what we've talked about today, actually. Managing your triggers, the rumination cycle, your self-deprecating talk, processing the grief, finding closure, all of these things. And it's a self-paced 7-week course. If you're interested or you have any questions, please send me a DM because for anybody that's watching this live or watching the replay, I'm doing an exclusive discount on the course and also my coaching. So if you have questions on either one of those, you DMing me doesn't sign up. It just lets me know that you're interested or have questions, but the discount code, I have to send it to you directly. It's not public anywhere. But especially the rumination obsessive thinking cycle, this course really helps with that. And then also the emotional management strategies and dealing with your triggers and stuff, because those are, we all deal with that. So I did just launch that. So again, if y'all are interested or have questions and you would like information about the discount, just send me a direct message. If you can't send me a DM on TikTok, hop over to my Instagram and you can send me a DM there. How do you control the panic attacks and anxiety? Well, first of all, being on medication for it is fine. Like there's nothing shameful in that at all. But I understand like not wanting to rely on that. I think that even if you're on that for just a little bit, just to help you get a little bit regulated, I think is great. Like I genuinely do, because the anxiety and the panic can be very debilitating. So for me, it's like, do whatever you need to do to just get to the point where you're able to live day-to-day life. But there are some ways that you can deal with it naturally too. And this may not be the answer you're looking for, but exercise is huge when it comes to dealing with anxiety. Did y'all see how big that fly was? If you've been on this one, oh my God, it flew in front of it. It was huge. I said this earlier. When there's flies in my house, I take personal offense. It just makes me feel really gross. Ugh. And then it's a big one. Anyways, go away. I'll deal with you later. Oh my God, I just got totally. Oh, anxiety and panic. Exercise is huge for it. There's something also called diaphragmatic breathing. If you do that on a regular basis and kind of start working that into your routine, that actually helps reduce anxiety. There's a ton of research backed with diaphragmatic breathing. You can YouTube it and find videos on how to do it. It's essentially where when you're breathing, instead of most of the time when we breathe, we feel our chest, like our chest puffs out, but with diaphragmatic breathing, it's your stomach is puffing out. If you've ever been in theater or like vocal classes or anything like that, they teach you diaphragmatic breathing with that. There's also techniques like grounding, which is where you use your senses to help get you grounded back into the moment instead of, because anxiety and panic is a lot about being out of control. So grounding gets you back in the present moment. So you can name like 5 things that you see, 4 sounds that you hear. What are 3 things that you can touch right now? What are 2 things that you smell? What's 1 thing that you taste? So you just like use your senses to get yourself back grounded in the present. You can also use it's a form of grounding, but you can get an ice cube and like squeeze it in the palm of your hand, put it in the back of your neck. So these are all like different anxiety strategies that you can do. Oh my God, it just landed on my face. That's disgusting. This fly, the fly is making more of a distraction than my dog is, which is not normal. Anyways, so there are some ways that you can work on it naturally. For me, oh, and this one's a big one. I never really wanted to try this because I thought it was hokey. But being in grad school and just seeing how much evidence it supports it made me try it, because literally I just refused to do it because I thought it sounded pointless. But meditating, um, and I hate to admit it, but I've been wrong this whole time. It really does help. And I just do like little 15-minute guided meditations that are on YouTube and they're free. I don't sit there and do it for like an hour or anything like that. So those are just some quick anxiety tips too. So I do have an article for like exit strategy tips. It's on the link in my bio. So if you go to that, it's kind of towards the bottom of the site. So just scroll down, and it'll say it on there. It's a free article that you can read that just gives some tips on creating an exit strategy. Oh yeah, someone said grounding methods and meditation. Yoga, that one actually is really good too for anxiety. And the nice thing about things like even like meditation or yoga or diaphragmatic breathing, like all this, like there's so much free stuff out there that you can utilize. So just any of those techniques, just hop on YouTube and you can find some stuff on it that you might like. No, you're definitely not crazy. And that's the thing, like that's how I know that this like I don't want to get myself in trouble again. But like I get comments several times about like just say you're abused, no narcissistic abuse. And it's just like such an ignorant comment to me, because the fact that we all like deal with the same stuff means that this is real. Like millions of, or thousands of millions of people can't make this crap up. You know, like we all have essentially the details of our stories are all different, but the side effects and the things that we deal with are all the same. You know, so it's just like, and I think that's why it's so important that this community exists, because it does, just like you said, you see it and you're like, oh, I'm not crazy. Like I remember when I found out that one of my best friends, when she, after I left my ex and I was kind of telling her about what was going on, she was the first person that ever said to me, I've been there too. I know exactly what you're going through. And it was like that, it was because you feel so misunderstood and you feel like people just won't get it because it's so hard to explain. Like how do you show proof of gaslighting? How do you show proof of blame shifting? I mean, I know you can tell the story, but like how do you explain what cognitive dissonance is? Like I couldn't even explain what was happening in my head, much less try to explain it to somebody else. So when she said I've been there and I dealt with this, it made me feel so much less crazy. So you don't get it unless you don't know unless you know. We'll just say that. So that's why I love this community so much. I genuinely do. But okay, guys. Well, I do need to hop off here so I can have a little bit of a break, as I have a group coaching that I'm doing in about a little over an hour. So I'm going to hop off here. But y'all have been so great and asking so many good questions, and I appreciate the interaction and all the sweet words that you guys are saying too. So again, just one last time, just in case you didn't hear the announcement, I did just launch an online course. It's called Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. It's a 7-week course. It's all self-paced, and it goes into rumination really heavy. It also talks about triggers and emotional management strategies and how to find closure and reach acceptance. It's jam-packed, and it's all research-backed. There's even articles that I put in there and videos, all of that. If you're interested in it, or you have any questions about it, or just want more information, please send me a direct message. I'm doing a thing where from this live, I'm doing a discount code. And so if you just go to my site, you won't get the discount. So just send me a DM, because I actually have to send you the code, it's like a coupon code. So I'll send it to you directly. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and then I'll respond to the DMs and stuff. But I am doing that, and that's for the course. And I'm also doing a one-on-one coaching discount too. So if you're interested in either one of those, I have questions for either ones. Please, please, please do not hesitate to message me. Messaging me doesn't mean you're signing up. It just means you have questions you want answered, or you're interested, I promise. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday afternoon. I really just appreciate all of the kind words that you guys say to me. And I just hope that you know that it truly is an honor to be a part of your healing journey, even if this is how I'm a part of your healing journey, and this is all that we do, just being on live or just on comments or videos or anything like that. So it truly is an honor for me. And I will probably be live again on Friday this week. I have my kiddos for the next 2 days, so I usually don't do a whole lot when I've got them. But hope you guys have a good evening, and I will see y'all at the next live.